Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Access, Engage, and Express, How to Personalize Learning and Maximize Achievement for All Students. My name is Holly Yedick, and I direct the Education Week Research Center. Education Week is our webinar host, and I will be your moderator. That means that I selected the questions that you'll hear me ask during the next hour. Education Week is only hosting and moderating this webinar. Opinions are the sponsors and don't reflect endorsements by editorial projects in education or our publications. The sponsor, TextHelp, is responsible for selecting the content and the guests. Before I tell you any more about today's exciting theme, let me highlight a few housekeeping issues. Please check the audio setting on your computer as well as your speaker volume settings if you are having audio trouble. If you are still having issues, please see the detailed audio troubleshooting file available in the resource list beneath the Q&A window. There are also some other icons located at the bottom of the webinar console that open some additional feature panels. You can read about today's speakers in the speaker bio panel and access the resource list to download a copy of today's slides. To submit a question, and I really hope that you do, type the question into the Q&A box located above the resource list window. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. Both the archive and a free-to-download version of the PowerPoint slides will be accessible through edweek.org. Okay, with that, let's get started on today's topic, Access, Engage, and Express, How to Personalize Learning and Maximize Achievement for All Students. Personalized learning is based around students' own personal interests and their natural ability to learn in order to develop their skills further and increase engagement in class. But the question remains, how can educators create an environment that enables this framework in a practical way for every student in the classroom? This webinar will address that question. Let me now introduce our guests. I'll start with Martin McKay. After studying computing, Martin founded TextHelp in 1996 to help people with communication difficulties. What started as a company focused on people with profound speech and dexterity disabilities has become an EdTech company providing software tools for people with dyslexia, people learning or working in a second language, or just learning to read. Martin has filed patents in technology areas related to talking ebooks, smartphone keyboards, and math user interfaces. Martin is a passionate technologist and new tech early adopter. He loves to build robots, 3D printers, and IoT-connected device projects. Martin is currently serving in an advisory capacity on the Universal Design for Learning Council. Let me move on now to our first guest speaker, Kathleen McClaskey. Kathleen is founder of Make Learning Personal, co-founder of Personalize Learning, LLC, and co-author of Make Learning Personal and How to Personalize Learning, a practical guide for getting started and going deeper. Kathleen began her career in educational technology in 1983 when she envisioned that computers were the great equalizer. She will tell you that she has realized that vision, and it is what drives her work in personalized learning. Today, Kathleen is an educational technologist, keynoter, professional developer, and Universal Design for Learning consultant with over 30 years of experience in creating learner-centered environments as a teacher, K-12 administrator, graduate instructor, and consultant. Starting in 2002, she designed and instructed graduate courses on UDL at Cambridge College and Plymouth State University. From 2003 to 2011, she designed and directed 7 multi-year state projects using UDL as the framework. She is passionate in empowering learners with tools, skills, and learning strategies so they become independent, self-directed learners with agency who are future ready for college, career, and life. Kathleen, welcome to the webinar, and with that, I'm going to hand things off to you.
Well, thank you very much, and just a wonderful introduction. And I'm very excited today to really share ideas around using the UDL lens. So welcome, everyone, to Access, Engage, and Express and How to Personalize Learning using the UDL lens. I will be kicking off this webinar, and I'll be followed by Martin, who's a CTO of TextHelp. and we look forward to your questions at the end of this webinar. So let's get on with the show. So what is personalized learning? This is a big question, and it's quite controversial. I virtually read probably 5 to 6 articles a week around personalized learning. 7 years ago, when I started investigating this, I probably only read maybe 1 article or 2 articles a month.
One of our team will be with you shortly. At TextHelp,
anyway,
we know that there's a whole world of avid readers and fluent writers out there waiting for the right support. And we think everyone deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential.
So I'm just going to pause there because I heard this audio. But anyway, personalized learning is a very controversial term, and it gets a bit of buzz in education. It means different things to different people depending on where and how it is referenced. Some believe it is the alternative to a one-size-fits-all instruction, where others see it as about programs that personalize learning for you. It is none of these. The fact is, personalized learning is about the learner and the ownership to learning. Over the last 6 years, the one question most often asked of me is, what is personalized learning? And this is how I've responded. The answer is simple. Personalized learning starts with the learner who understands how they learn, where they take ownership to their learning, have a voice and choice in their learning, are able to monitor their own progress. Above all, they have the skills and strategies with tools, apps, and resources to support their own learning and are self-directed and independent to be lifelong learners. So just think about that as we go on with this webinar today, and just keep those ideas in mind. I would like to point out today that in the reauthorization of ESSA, Every Student Succeed Act, in 2015, Universal Design for Learning was defined and endorsed by ESSA as a scientifically based approach to personalized learning. So today, I'm actually going to show you how that can be done. Why personalized learning using the UDL lens? This is a really good question. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you what the UDL lens is about, and here are just some compelling reasons why you want to personalize learning using the UDL lens. You want to create a sustainable personalized learning system where a common language is needed. I've noted here that the common language is between teacher and learner, but virtually everyone in the system needs to have and use a common language in a personalized learning culture. Second, you want to create a learner-centered environment where every child is valued. We need to empower each learner to tell their story about who they are and how they learn using a learner profile. You want every learner to share their story and to build a personal learning backpack that would include tools, apps, skills, and learning strategies to support their own learning. You want every learner to be college and career ready. In order to do that, we need to have each learner set goals for skill development as well as personal, college, career, and citizenship goals in a personal learning plan. Why PL, personalized learning using the UDL lens? Most of all, to develop learner agency. The question we need to be asking ourselves as educators is, what should we promise each learner as they walk through the schoolhouse door each day? The answer is, it's agency. Always should be agency. Lastly, and most important on why use UDL to personalize learning, to discover the learner in every child so that they always see themselves as learners. Over 4 years ago, we developed a more practical way to apply Universal Design for Learning principles into daily practice. We changed the terms to reflect how a learner may access, engage, and express. So, multiple means of representation represents how a learner accesses and processes information into usable knowledge. Multiple means of engagement represents how a learner engages with content. And multiple means of expression and action represents express and how a learner expresses what they know and understand. So, understanding how each learner needs to access information and transform it into usable knowledge to engage with content, concepts, and ideas, and how they need to express their ideas and understanding is important before designing instruction. So let's take a closer look at the UDL lens of access, engage, and express, and think about the learners you may have in your class. Okay? Each learner has a preference or need to access information. Maybe that's done with a hard copy, a digital file, or even an audio format. Each learner may have a preference and need to engage with content. Some may prefer to design or problem solve. Some may prefer to collaborate with another learner, and others may engage with interactive experiences. Each learner may have a preference and need in how they express or take action. This could be writing, storytelling, building, or constructing. The point is understanding each learner's strengths, challenges, preferences, and needs in these three areas of access, engage, and express. This is the first step in creating a learner-centered, personalized learning environment. It's also about giving the learner voice and choice in how they access, engage, and express. Okay, the UDL lens is used, by the way, by both teachers and learners. And using the UDL lens to discover the learner in every child can be a great conversation starter between teacher and learner. Think about this particular conversation that you can have, where the learner can share their strengths, their challenges, preferences, and needs, and how they need to access, engage, and express. Again, this does become the common language that is used between teachers and learners in daily practice. Now, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper and introduce you to the process that uses the UDL lens. Here is a three-step process to develop agency with learners. I'll expand on each of these in the next few slides, but let me introduce you to this process. The learner uses a learner profile to share how they learn using the UDL lens of access, engage, and express. I do want to point out that at no time in this process do we ever use learning styles. Okay? But this is where, in that learner profile, that they share their interests, talents, and aspirations. Once this is shared, the partnership between teacher and learner begins. The two can collaborate on the design of a personal learning backpack that includes the tools, apps, in addition the skills to support their learning. They can also work together to set learning goals in a personal learning plan so the learner can gain the skills they need to become more independent and self-directed. Other goals are also described with an action plan and also a way to monitor their progress. There's also a piece of real reflection on all of these goals. But with these goals set down on paper, the learner can begin, or on a digital file, the learner can begin to monitor their own progress and modify and set new goals based on their learner profile. A digital portfolio is maintained by the learner to demonstrate achievement and to record reflections. So this very easy three-step process can be easily applied at any grade level in K-12. The next few slides, I'm going to show you some examples of what that happens to look like, and those examples will be more at that 4th grade to 12th grade level. But I do want to emphasize that this process applies to all grade levels. I'm often asked, why a learner profile? Since we collect so much data on every child through standardized testing and through all sorts of testing mediums. So here's my response to many people. Would you like to know, and would you like the learner to know, what they see their strengths are, what they understand their challenges are in their learning, how they prefer or need to access information, how they prefer or need to engage with the content, how they prefer or need to express what they know and understand, what they're interested in, what they are passionate about, how they would describe themselves, and how they may want to make a difference in this world. So let's take a closer look into the learner profile. Again, I'm going to emphasize that schools are going to create learner-centered environments. We need to empower each learner with an understanding in how they learn. Here is an example of a learner profile. I'm sure that many of you recognize some of these descriptions of learners you have or had. And this learner is someone I personally know. He had and still has these strengths, but he struggled in school with the challenges listed here. His challenges were related to reading, writing, and organizing, and found in every school. I will present some ideas in the next step and in the process and how this learner can develop the skills to support his learning. But before I do, I would like for you to keep in mind that having a learner develop a learner profile helps them tell their story of who they are and how they learn for the very first time. There are two important things that happen when a learner can share this. First, it helps validate them in how they learn. And as you know, many children with challenges like this may be ashamed in how they learn. Secondly, it says to the learner how much you care about them. So for those two reasons, this is really a powerful tool for the teacher and learner. Building a personal learning backpack is the next step, where it is decided if the learner wants to enhance a strength or support a challenge. Both of these are important, but in the end, we want the learner to develop the skills and strategies to enhance and support their own learning so they can become more self-directed. This is where the conversations can continue and about setting learning goals around access, engage, and express. Here's an example of a personal learning backpack developed based upon the strengths and challenges of this learner described around the UDL lens of access, engage, and express. This learner has a unique personal learning backpack. He has discussed with his teacher or advisor what tools or apps that could support his challenges and enhance his strengths. With the access challenge, it is decided that he'll learn how to use a Chrome app, maybe text help, read and write to support his reading. With his engage challenge in the area of organization, he'll learn how to set up file and folder management system, maybe in Google Drive or maybe even Dropbox. And he may also learn how to use ToolDo for organizing project tasks. With his express strength, he's going to learn how to create captions and to support an express strength. So he'll learn how to use maybe Notability for taking notes by using the drawing, note-taking, and audio recording features. He's ready now to discuss the learning goals and how he may be able to achieve the skills for him to be more independent in his learning. I'd like to point out that in this process, digital literacy is an outcome that each learner will achieve by using tools to enhance and support their learning. A personal learning plan includes learning goals to develop those skills and strategies around the strengths and challenges a learner has so they can become more independent and self-directed. Above all, to develop agency in the end. Personal goals are based on a learner's talents, interests, and aspirations and passions. Sometimes this becomes a pathway to graduation. There's some excellent examples of this actually in Vermont. College and career goals offer a way for learners to try out what they would like to do and interact with professionals and to participate in a field where they may have interest. I live in New Hampshire. We actually call them extended learning opportunities. Citizenship goals serves as a way for learners to contribute to their local, state, or global community. Living in our democracy, each learner needs to become a good citizen. From that personal learner profile and personal learning backpack example, a personal learning plan is developed that includes access, engage, and express goals so that the learner can develop, again, those independent skills. The learner and the teacher or advisor collaborate on the plan to outline the action steps to reach the goal and indicate evidence in achieving the goal along with the date it was achieved. And for each goal, they can also include supports they'll need to achieve the goal. This happens to be an example of an access goal in a personal learning plan. And this learner decided he wanted to develop skills with an app to support his reading and comprehension. Goal setting and action planning are important lifelong skills that each learner needs to develop, and developing a PLP helps them gain these skills. The focus this learner is to develop so he can be more independent in his reading, and the focus of this learner is to develop those skills. He'll also include additional information in his plan, which will include the types of apps that he'll be using, the supports that he may need inside or outside of school to reach this goal, and also a reflection on reaching the goal. He will need to learn how to monitor his own progress and consult with his teacher or advisor on his progress. In the end, self-advocacy can result, and ownership to learning can be the outcome. So I just like sort of backtrack just for a moment. And so it's the learner profile, the personal learning backpack, and the personal learning plan that really can bring children to agency and self-advocacy. Here's an example of a college and career goal in a personal learning plan, and the process of goal setting, action planning, and progress monitoring is included. And this young man aspires to be a forest ranger and would like an extended learning opportunity to discover if this is a career he may want to pursue. And as you can see, he has set a goal and action steps to meet his goal and describes the evidence in meeting that. But this is just a snapshot of a personal learning plan. There's additional information in this template that also includes the supports he'll need, apps, tools, resources that can actually support this college and career goal. Overall, this learner will acquire a set of skills that can serve him for a lifetime: goal setting, action planning, progress monitoring, and reflection. I do want to mention that this and all this information that I've talked about is actually found in our publication called How to Personalize Learning. Just a recap of this. A personal learning plan is derived from the learner's understanding of who they are as learners from their learner profile and building a personal learning backpack with the help of a teacher or an advisor. And during this process, the learner gains new skills and strategies as challenges turn into strengths and the partnership with the teacher grows stronger. And when this happens, the learner is truly on the path to becoming a self-directed learner with agency. And as the learner becomes more proactive and self-directed in their learning, self-advocacy naturally comes into play. You see, learner agency leads to self-advocacy. So I want to thank everyone who joined us today in this webinar. And I'd like to point out that the ideas on learner agency and the three-step processes are found in How to Personalize Learning. I'd also like to take a moment to thank TextHealth for inviting me to do this webinar and to EdWeek for their support in sponsoring this webinar. I'd like to invite you to follow me on Twitter and visit my website, KathleenMcClaskey.com. And I want to note that there's discount codes to purchase either publications of Make Learning Personal or How to Personalize Learning on the Corwin site. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Martin McKay, and he's going to talk about wonderful tools that can personalize learning.
Kathleen, thank you very much indeed. That was great to hear. I've had access to Kathleen's slides for a couple of days, but it's really good to hear you talk through them. It really brings them to life. So for all of the attendees in the webinar, I thank you for joining us. My name is Martin. I'm the CTO at TextHelp, so I look after our R&D. I kind of manage the software development here. But I'm not here today to talk about TextHelp tools because that would be just kind of inappropriate. What we want to do here is provide a forum for as many people as possible to come online and learn about all kinds of tools that could be useful to have in your personal learning backpack. So I want to just use 3 short examples of tools that I'm aware of that are useful from a personalized learning perspective. And before I go too much further, I want to, Kathleen and I were talking about this a few days ago. At the very beginning of this process, you've got to look at the kids or the students, and first of all, think about their strengths. Don't start thinking about them as the kid with dyslexia or the kid from Venezuela who doesn't have any English yet or has very little English yet. Don't think about their challenges. First of all, think about their strengths and think about what strengths they can bring to their learning. And I want today to think a little bit about collaborative learning because that's happening more and more. Collaboration is a thing that is just kind of expected nowadays in the workplace, and kids need to be able to work together on a project and each fulfill their own role in the project. And actually, teamwork is a fantastic opportunity for a disparate group of kids to work together, each bringing their own strengths to play. At work, we used to use a thing called the Belbin framework. Each team needs, a leader and a completer finisher. A completer finisher is the person who'll pick up all of the details. Believe me, in my teams, I need a completer finisher. I'm one of these guys who charges ahead and expects everyone else to pick up after me. So, you might have kids, one kid who really likes to be a leader, has good ideas, but maybe they're not very diligent and they're not good at writing down the detail. You might have other kids who are shy, but they really like to write and they're good authors. You've got other kids who just don't like to write very much, but they like to draw. And even labeling kids like that is not great. My daughter sometimes will stare at a blank page for ages. She can't write, and then she'll draw a picture for 10 minutes, and then she'll start to write around the picture, and all of a sudden, the content starts to flow, and she finds a little bit of illustration kind of unlocks her thinking, and it really lets her go. And so the very first thing you want to do when you're thinking about tools to put in someone's backpack is thinking about their strengths first. And then, we've all got weaknesses. We've all got challenges that we need help with. And, at TextHelp, we very often think about challenges that people have with reading and with writing. And we've got tools that a lot of people know about. Our read and write tools are used to help students with reading and writing at home and at school. So I don't really want to talk about those things too much because hopefully most people are aware. But a lot of kids have difficulty just with things like keeping organized. How should they structure an essay or a presentation, or even if a project might be to do like the front page of a newspaper, how do they organize their thoughts around that and start working on it? And some kids are just shy, and some kids are just shy just some of the time. Some kids could be tired. That's a learner variability. And some kids don't have breakfast because of their personal circumstances, and they're not going to be very switched on early in the morning. So there's lots of variability, but I just want to think about a few things here first of all. And I want to think about some tools that can help in these scenarios. So the first thing I want to think about is collaborative tools. And I'm specifically here thinking about Google Docs and Google Slides, but also Office 365 has got some collaboration tools in there now. It's very, very common for people to work together now in one project. And we need to be preparing our students for the real world. So this kind of project work and even real-time collaboration in project work is happening in the workplace, and kids need to get used to it. So I think teachers and learners should be using this collaboration technology when they're teaching and learning and getting ready for work. And if you get a group of kids together who work on a Google Slides project to do a presentation or a doc, you can get the leader role can be filled by someone who can look at the team and see who's going to be best at what tasks, assigning the writing to the person who's best at writing, or assigning the ideas person to create the titles for the slides, and getting the person who's better at illustration to do the drawings for the slides, and so on. Because that way everyone has got some ownership of the thing, and they all feel like that they've participated. And believe me, even the kid who just does the illustrations, they will learn the content, and they'll be proud of what they've done, and that keeps them engaged in the whole process. And that is as important as anything. Just getting the kids engaged in the learning process and feeling that they're participating. That's an important thing. And also, I heard a great story from a teacher who was using Google Docs. He was really struggling to get through to a girl in the class. She just was non-communicative, wouldn't speak, really, really quiet and shy. So her learner variability was she just didn't want to talk in front of other people. And she was a smart little cookie. She just was really, really shy. And the teacher used Google Classroom and Google Docs. And she'd shared a lesson. And she jumped into the document that the little girl was writing, and she commented on something that the girl had written. And the girl immediately jumped into the little chat window and commented back. And so the teacher was able to break through there and start a kind of quiet and personal and private dialogue between her and this kid. And she really got through and really made a breakthrough with that kid. So, don't think of these collaboration tools as just tools for collaboration. They can also be used as, a communication tool. So I think that's we shouldn't just think about, in terms of student variability, things that you'll see on an IEP list. Some kids are bombastic, some kids are shy. And if we can try to create a learning environment that's good for all of them, it's a really useful tool. So I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of the whole Google thing. I know there's a math teacher who we work quite closely with, and she will use these collaboration tools in a really interesting way. So she'll create a Google slide deck, and on slide 1, she'll post a math problem. And then she'll say to the class, okay, everyone, jump into this slide deck and make a copy of slide 1 and give me your answer. And so all of a sudden, she will have her 1 slide deck turns into a 30-slide slide deck, and everyone is working in the same document. And if she sees a kid who's doing a good job, she can highlight that on the on the big screen, on the whiteboard at the front of the class, and say, look how Emma is tackling this problem. Isn't it a great idea? But she can also personally and privately go to another kid and using the comment tools, steer that kid into the right direction. And at the end of the day, she's got kind of 1 slide deck to go through to give people feedback instead of 30 different documents. So lots and lots of different ways that collaborative tools can be used to really help people class. So the next thing I want to think about is, and this is a teacher tool. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of Newsela, but I just think Newsela is the most fantastic kind of personalized learning tool. It's kind of a teacher tool, but it's so good. I was originally going to do a live demo here, but I think that's going to be spinning too many plates in the air, so we're just going to use a slide. But Newsela is a brilliant resource. Every day they publish news stories, and So, for example, at the moment they've got stories about the wildfires in California, and but they have an authoring team, and each time they write a story, they'll write it at different Lexile levels. So on the slide that I've got in front of me, it's a slide about leaves and why leaves change colors, and there's a little drop-down menu, and I can choose the reading age that I want to read this story at. So it goes from reading age 330 Lexile right up to, I think it's about 1100 Lexile, that story. And this means that as a teacher, even though you may have a wide range of reading abilities in the class, you can have you can build a lesson plan around this story, and the kids who are more advanced in their reading can go in at the top level, and the kids who are less capable with kind of complex vocabulary and longer passages can go in at the lower level. But they can all participate in the same lesson plan, and they can all feel like the content is at the right level for them. So I think it's a great tool. It's a freemium premium thing, so it doesn't even cost anything to get basic access to it. It's got quizzes and scoring and all sorts of good stuff. But it's a brilliant resource, and you should. I'm not connected with them in any way, although I've met the company. I know the guys who are involved in it. We've got no kind of commercial relationship with them. I just think it's brilliant, and you know, as a resource that allows one teacher in one lesson to address a range of reading abilities in a classroom with a single lesson, I think it's a great tool. So that's Newsella. And then here's a kind of weird one for you. Google Keep. Why is Google Keep a tool that may or may not be useful in a personal learning backpack? So I don't know if you guys have used Google Keep, but it's a kind of task list, and it allows me to keep a shopping list or keep a list of things that I need to do. Not just one list. I can have lots of lists. I can have a personal list and a work list. We have a shopping list that my wife and I share, and it's such a cool tool because it addresses my variability in my life. And you know, this is one of the reasons why I don't think it's right that we should label learners, because some days I'm in front of a keyboard, and Google Keep meets me there with a full screen browser application, and I can type with keyboard, and it meets my needs there. But sometimes I'll be walking from one room to another, or walking down the street, and I want to use Google Keep, and it presents a different user interface for me. So when I'm walking around, it's got a phone user interface, and I can speak to it, and it will recognize my text. So I mean, that could take into account the variability of someone not being able to write very well. As well as doing speech recognition, it can just do audio recording. So if I'm doing a project on nature and I want to go out and record some bird song, I can take Google Keep with me, and it'll record that audio. And I can also write with a stylus, with a pen, if I've got a pen, or I can write with my finger. I can use the camera. So it really allows me to capture, it really is, it's perfect. It's like multiple means of information capture and multiple means of presentation all built into one little app. But they've gone further than that. If I'm driving my car and, you know, someone calls me and says, you need to pick up some mozzarella cheese on the way home, I can just say to my watch, remind me to pick up some mozzarella cheese. And so it thinks about me when I'm at my PC and when I'm walking and when my hands are busy. And if I'm laying around at home watching the TV, I can even speak to my Google Home. And I think that this is an interesting thing. This is where kind of learning technologies are going. A kind of multi-device, really flexible set of tools. But one of the very cool things about Google Keep is if you're using Google Keep to store all this information, if you're using Google Docs or Google Slides, there's a little panel that you can slide in from the side, and you can drag and drop all of that stuff that you captured during the week by voice or by typing or by writing with your pen or with your camera or by recording audio or speaking to your watch or laying on the sofa. All of those times that you had an idea that might be useful in your learning project, Google Keep pulls all of that stuff together in all of those different formats. So a perfect, multiple means of representation and multiple means of engagement tool, and it allows you to take all that information and put it in docs and slides. But for me at the moment, that's just the perfect one. It covers everything. I think it's a fantastic tool. And for schools that have gone Google, it's now part of the core Google service. I know that Google occasionally in the past have brought out a cool thing, and then like 2 years later it's disappeared. But they've committed to keeping this one, so I think it's very, very good and very, very interesting. So one of the things that our team here wanted me to think about was giving some thought to what the future of personalized learning is going to be like. And I get very excited about this. I think that you may have seen some of this stuff happening. Augmented reality and virtual reality are starting to edge their way into education. Microsoft have been doing some stuff with HoloLens, and Google have been doing some stuff with Google Cardboard and Google Exhibitions. And I know it might seem a little bit out there at the moment, but if you think about it, video was just starting to make its way into education 15 years ago. People didn't have enough bandwidth, computers didn't have enough screen resolution, processors weren't fast enough to run video, and those are the same kind of technical challenges that augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality are having now. So I think that stuff is going to appear, and I think it's going to be very cool. But also something that we're really interested in and actively working on at TextHelp is using artificial intelligence and machine learning to kind of think ahead and suggest some personalized learning environment kind of tweaks for you. So imagine if you're browsing the web and the web browser knows that you've got a reading age of 10, and it finds a web page and there are a bunch of words in that web page that are just too complicated. So imagine if it was smart and it automatically replaced them with simpler synonyms. So that's something that I can see, someone who goes to their browser and puts in some of their characteristics, some of their something from their kind of personal learning profile, and the browser could kind of modify how it presents information to better suit that kid. Imagine a word processor that, based on your writing style and the types of spelling errors that you make, maybe suspects that you're dyslexic and suggests, a word prediction tool or a kind of grammar checking tool to help kids, get some extra assistance with writing. So, I can kind of see a future where the learning environment is smart and offers some kind of personalization systems. So I think we can probably build these tools. We're doing some work at the moment in this space with machine learning, and we're partnering with some school districts to look at trying to identify whether kids are dyslexic or not based on the style of their writing. Obviously, we've got 11 million users now. So with the permission of school districts, we can feed a lot of that text into a machine learning system and try to provide the teacher with information about how likely a kid is to fall into a kind of dyslexic kind of behavior category, or rather writing behaviors that are very similar to kids who have been kind of diagnosed with dyslexia. And this is not an unreasonable thing that I'm talking about. 20 years ago, if I had said everyone in the world is going to have a free web browser and it'll know what your first language is, and if you go to a Spanish website, for example, it pops up a little thing that says, oh, looks like this is Spanish, do you want me to translate it? And I say yes. 20 years ago, that would have seemed like the Babel fish from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And now it's in front of everyone, and it's in all our phones, and it's free. And I really think that we can take that type of approach to personalized learning and have the browser suggest supports based on behaviors that we can observe. So I'm not sure exactly what the future is going to look like, but I know it's going to be multi-device, and there's going to be a lot of AI in there, and I'm personally looking forward to it. And that's kind of all that I've got in my head on the subject at the moment. So I thank you very much for spending 44 of your minutes so far listening to Kathleen and myself talk about this. Thank you, Kathleen. I think your stuff is much grounded in reality, much more than some of the stuff that I'm imagining here. But I would really welcome your questions now. And at this point, I'm going to hand back over to Holly.
Thank you so much. And thank all of you who've submitted questions. I encourage others to submit questions. Our first question is about the personalized learning plan. And Kelly wants to know, is the personalized learning plan done outside of instruction time? When is it worked on, and when exactly do students do the things that they put in the PLP?
Well, in many schools, there's sometimes advisory time in which learners are actually doing this. But there really needs to be some sort of dedicated time for learners to be able to work on their personal learning plan. And I think that it is probably outside of instructional time. And I'm always looking at advisory programs and this happening there. But in say a K-5 environment, this actually could be a part of just really a weekly review with learners. So in many schools in that K-5 model actually have dedicated time to do this type of work. So this is probably key to really having kids really set goals, action steps, and actually realizing achievement. And it's about skill development in the end. So when kids walk out the schoolhouse door, they're really just walking out with a set of skills, a set of knowledge that they may have or may keep with them for a short or long period of time. But this is the personal learning plan definitely can be used on a regular basis and reviewed on a regular basis as far as goal setting is concerned.
Here's another question about. Yeah, it does, I believe. Here's another question about the personalized learning plan. This question is from Jessica, and she wants to know how much time does it take to go through the process of creating the learning profile, the backpack, the personal learning plan, and which staff member usually develops this plan?
Just keep in mind, okay, so the learner profile certainly could be done in pieces. Some of the introductory stuff to a learner profile is really discovering kids and what their passions and interests are and how they like to share information. And so the processes can be spread out over time. But this is something that we often advise schools to do in the first couple of weeks of school, because I just want you to think about the fact that if you actually understood who your learners were and have them really create a learner profile and have that initial discussion, that's really the foundation in building a relationship with a learner. And the culture in the classroom would be far more supportive over the long period of time if, in fact, learners were able to do this at the very beginning of school. The personal learning backpack is really a discussion between the teacher or advisor and learner, and that's done consistently. So there should be some sort of set time to do all of that. And it depends really upon what grade level you're in and how that's done. This certainly could be used where things are being shared out maybe in a private document between teacher and learner. And the personal learning plan is worked on all over the time, over the course of the year, and kids are keeping a portfolio of achievement around those goals. So I think that there is the importance in doing this should be take some sort of precedent over other things, because until you understand who your learners are and how they learn, designing instruction is quite difficult because you want to be effective to reach and instruct all learners in the classroom. In the publication, How to Personalize Learning, I do want to tell you that all of these templates that are in that book are actually online and available to teachers. so who are reading that book. That's why we've called it a practical guide. It has to really sort of take a precedent in your school if, in fact, you want to have learners share those things out and to make their learning more personal. So there's a lot of things that that need to be established in the school around personalized learning before using many of these tools. So I hope I answered that question, and you know, people can certainly send me emails or and ask me more questions if they would like to. So.
Here's a question from Haiti, and this is a question about accountability for students. Haiti wants to know, how do we ensure that the program is pushing students to master standards, grade level expectations for their grade, and not letting students tread water in their comfort zone?
Well, that's really an excellent question. First of all, the thing is that if we want 100% of the kids to be able to achieve mastery of competencies and stuff like that in schools, they do have to have a set of skills to do that. Understanding children and how they learn certainly is important. And I don't think that kids are just on their own. You're basically building a culture to be supportive to every learner in the classroom. Kids, when they are actually able to achieve the skills to really perform well and master competencies, that's really the goal in doing all of this, so that they have the skills to do that. Right now, I don't think that we really have a system in place where kids are achieving mastery 100% of the time with 100% of the learners. So this is just a way of helping kids develop the skills they need to be able to do that work and to meet standards. Above all, kids need to be able to articulate those standards in a way and then be able to actually even share how they're going to master those standards so that kids actually have this voice around mastery. So that's really critically important.
Here's a question now from Andrea. Andrea says that she encounters teachers who are struggling with the necessary shift to personalized learning and demand quote-unquote research. How should she respond?
Well, you know, there's actually quite a bit of research actually around personalized learning, and I just want to make a reference to a researcher across the pond that we came upon about 7 years ago, and his name is Chris Watkins, and he has done a bit of research around personalized learning over the last 20-plus years. And basically in his research, he basically says, and proved out in research, that if you have a performance-orientated type of classroom where performance is the goal, you actually decrease performance. But if your focus is on a learner-orientated classroom, you actually improve performance. And there's quite a bit of research on that. I'd also will tell you that all of his research is out on chriswatkins.net, along with many papers that he's written around personalized learning in learner-centered environments. So there is a bit of research. And the further research is actually from Brown University, and that was back, I think, in 2003 by John Clark, and that can easily be accessed online. It's a PDF file. But if anyone needs to contact me, I have those documents.
Okay, I'm going to turn now to a question from Tate, who wants to know, in an environment that is not one-to-one in terms of devices, how do you differ your delivery with personalized learning?
Well, first of all, what I presented today was around the learner profile and backpack and plan. But once you understand who your learners are, then you can actually take a look at the learners in your classroom and then design lessons that are more effective for the maximum amount of learners, so that you're really thinking about the learners, what the barriers could possibly be in a lesson, or the materials or the methods, and then actually design lessons and materials that are more universally designed to reach the maximum amount of learners. So that is another discussion altogether. Actually, we have quite a bit written in the book, How to Personalize Learning, around lesson design and lesson review using the UDL lens. It's not about personalizing it for every single learner. Always keep remembering that you're trying to derive and trying to have learners develop the ownership to learning, and you have to have the flexibility for kids to be able to show their learning in different ways, for sure. Giving voice and choice is absolutely key in creating, when you're initially trying to create a personalized learning environment. And let me just say, it just doesn't happen overnight. This does take time to change the culture in the classroom, as well as changing instruction to make it more effective for all the learners.
Okay, I'm going to turn now to a question from Claudio. Claudio says that he works in a situation where he has about 30 students per class with 8 classes in all. Truth be told, sometimes he struggles even with their names. To what extent is it possible to make learning personal with such a huge number of students?
Well, the thing is that this whole piece around voice and choice is really key. But with 30 kids in the classroom, getting to know just one, even if you would just get to know one quality from each learner, that would really be pretty significant. I recall many years ago myself and having 6 classes with about 20 to 25 kids in a class, and really thinking about how you can really be more effective in the classroom. And just remember, you're not personalizing your instruction for each and every learner, okay? You're really understanding, and in the case where you have, say, 30 learners, you basically, if you could understand the learners from both ends of the learning spectrum, okay, then the research and the neuroscience says that you could most likely be more effective in your instruction if you could understand 4 learners in your classroom from both ends. There's a little bit more information in our book, How to Personalize Learning. So the thing is that I would love to refer people to that, because it's really helpful to understand about what's called the class learning snapshot, and how you really get that snapshot of just a small section of learners, and how you can be more effective in your instruction, knowing just 4 learners. That's a big question, really big question.
All right, let's take a question now from Shelley. How do you balance personalized learning with standardized tests?
Personalized learning with standardized tests.
So,
well, Martin, if you'd like to jump in here, that would be great. So.
Yeah, well, like standardized tests don't really allow for personalized learning. Standardized tests are a bit of a blunt instrument in that every kid has to sit the same assessment. But I suppose, it's assessing what they've learned and giving them an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge. If we've taken a personalized learning approach during the school year, the theory is that all kids should have a fair shot at the standardized test, and there is some opportunity for addressing variability in the standardized test, because there are accommodations that are allowed for kids who need extra help. Like read aloud is an accommodation that's allowed, and word prediction in most states is allowed. But I'm not sure if there are very many teachers who are a fan of standardized testing. It's often a little bit of a blunt instrument. But yeah, that's really about the assessment and not about the learning, I think.
I do want to mention before we end here is that there is a new test being tested out here in New Hampshire. It's called the PACE test, which is an alternative to a standardized test. And I would believe probably within the next year or 2, you're going to see that sort of expand across many states. So the future really is that there's going to be other alternatives to a standardized test that are going to be acceptable and New Hampshire was given the privilege a couple of years ago to actually develop the PACE test. So it's P-A-C-E, and if you can Google that in New Hampshire, and you can take a look at that, because I think that's really going to spread to other states as well. So, but that, I know it doesn't really answer with the, the piece around standardized tests. Well, if you focus on learning with learners, then kids will do better on standardized tests. And if they can develop the skills to do that. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kathleen. We have now reached the end of our webinar, Access, Engage, and Express, How to Personalize Learning and Maximize Achievement for All Students. Thanks so much to our sponsor, TextHelp, to Kathleen, and to Martin. Before we go, I'd like to remind everyone that an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. Both the archive and a free-to-download version of the PowerPoint slides will be accessible through edweek.org. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you all again at a future Education Week webinar.